is so healthy, why aren't we all drinking it all the time? Or making cheese with it?
Hold on. Business idea. Human cheese. Nobody steal it. I call patent.
Oh, so gross.
Gross? Are you telling me you'll have sex with a woman but not a cow, but drink a cow's milk and not a woman's?
Is that a real question? Of course.
Oh, boy.
Wow. We eat cows. I think what Garrett's trying to say is that if we ate human women, then we could drink their milk.
Oh, wow, Garrett, that is...
No, I'm not saying...
You know, they might be onto something. With the cow milk thing, not the, you know. Okay, I think I got it all figured out. It was all so clear, how did I not see it before? Oh, I didn't see you come in there. No, don't go. I've been looking into this for a while, and I think I figured out the reason why we favor cow products so much, and why there's so much cheese everywhere. It's all connected, man. Runs deeper than I thought. We're the only ones who will know this, you and I. Comrades in the fight against the bovine's tyranny. Calm down, Noah. You gotta make yourself presentable. Say something a normal person would say. Before we get started, remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. It really helps a lot, and lets me know what kind of content y'all want to see more of. Was that convincing enough? Yeah. Good. In order to uncover the ultimate truth of this deep state dairy deception, it's time for everyone's favorite segment, What the f*** happened in prehistory to get us to where we are today? Throwback all the way back to the prehistoric Neolithic period, about 12,000 years ago when people were first discovering agriculture. At some point, some rando walked up to a cow or goat, watched it nursing, and went, hey girl, let me get some of that sweetness. And managed to get a squirt or two in before the cow was like, no f***ing way, this is for my kid. So the human said, okay girl, we'll just make you submissive and breedable until you're too dumb and docile and will give me what I want. And thus began the domestication of livestock. And this happened more than once. A few thousand years later in the Americas, about 3500 BCE, some indigenous guy or gal was ballsy enough to dare to grab a bison or reindeer teat for that creamy sweet. Up until this point, cows, well, technically an extinct type of ox, the auroch, were kept mainly for their meat. But after this encounter, we began drinking milk pretty regularly. The use of these animals for milk became pretty helpful for nomadic groups roaming around Europe, Asia, and the Arabian Peninsula who were able to use the animals for transportation aid now that they weren't being killed off as quickly. On the move, these nomads spread and traded animals with others as they roamed between regions, with animals like sheep and goats being introduced from Asia. Still being a little f***ed up in the head, some of these people thought if they could milk cows, why not try to milk other animals we got now too? Sheep, goats, and cows became the big three dairying animals for a long time throughout Eurasia, the Middle East, and Northern Africa. After a while, sheep dropped off and became used mainly for wool and meat, since their use as dairy animals wasn't practical, what with the small amount of milk they produced per day. Seeing a gap in the growing dairy market, the regions raced to try and find a replacement animal that could stand up to cows and goats. Horse, donkey, yak, camel all became relatively popular in their respective regions, but never quite caught on anywhere else before fading into obscurity. Without a replacement, goats and cows became the duo to lead the dairy industry for the foreseeable future, with cows obviously taking first place.
But Noah,
You may be saying,
milk is just one part of the dairy industry. What about the good stuff?
well, jumping back to the initial development of dairying, you gotta remember this was the Neolithic period we're talking about. It was difficult enough for researchers to track down the history of milk, let alone cheese. So basically, we don't know when or how it was discovered, but we can make some assumptions based on the time and tools available. Just because cows were being used for milk didn't mean that they and their barnyard friends were exempt from slaughtering altogether. Still needed meat after all. But animals don't just got meat though. They got skin and bones. And most importantly for our story, organs. Used to store water and other goods, sheep and cow stomachs were an indispensable tool for nomads and settlers. Since they used it to store liquid water, we can assume people probably use stomach bags to carry milk around with them too. Keep in mind these weren't the cleanest vessels in the world. Odds are there were some traces of rennet left in the stomach, an enzyme found in the stomach of grazing mammals. It kinda acts similarly to citric acid. If you've ever had milk and orange juice at the same time, you'll know what happens. When the milk hits the OJ, or the rennet in our prehistoric friend's case, the milk begins to curdle, separating into cheese curds and whey in the stomach. Delicious. Unlike us, though, the farmers could eat the contents they made since, it wasn't inside them. It does seem like a fairly plausible explanation, but for now this story remains one of several theories. What makes the history of cheese even more difficult is, yet again, it happened independently in different parts of the world with the discovery of dairying. Clearly, the process of cheesing was refined over time to give us the good hard milk, otherwise we'd still be eating the prehistoric version of cottage cheese on top of our pizzas. It took a while to get the process down, with earlier versions of cheese being significantly harder and oversalted since farmers couldn't preserve products through other means. Imagine eating a cheese rind doused in salt, and you can get a pretty decent idea of what this milk jerky might have been like. Near the Middle Ages, cheesemakers were getting kinda bored with eating all the Gros Gruyere and started putting less salt into the product. However, this left the end result kinda bland, so they figured, hey, we're all dying anyway, and why not put some molten shit inside this food? It may sound gross, but this is where cheesemaking truly evolved from a production to art. And the rest, as they say, is history. I couldn't think of a pun there. I said it like it should be. Oh well. Now this is all interesting and whatnot, but it still doesn't answer the question. Cows have dominated the dairy industry for as long as we've been sneaking sips out of their milk sacks. They're certainly the preference for the industry, but there are so many other mammals out there that produce the white stuff. Why are we so obsessed with these teats in particular? I mean, dogs, cats, humans? Like I said before, during the development of dairying and cheesing, different regions started experimenting with other animals to see if there was a possible competitor for the moo juice. Unfortunately for them, these animals all had their downsides when it came to mass milking. Camels are strange animals. I mean, we all know that already, just look at them. Tumor llamas. Camel milk may have been a bit more ideal for cheese making in drier climates back in the day, but not so much now. Take a jug of milk and dump a salt shaker into it and you've basically got camel milk. An extremely salty substance, camel milk, like all mammals' milk, is affected by their diet, and for these herbivorous ungulates, the desert and prairie plants that they eat make their milk often comparable to ocean water. Not only salty, but containing almost no solidifying agents, it's a long and painstaking process just to get a bit of butter or cheese out of the lumpy horse's excretions, so they can really only be used for drinking. Throwing another wrench into the process, camels are stupid finicky when it comes to milking, only producing milk about 2 times a day, only when a calf is nursing, and only for 90-second intervals. So if you miss this window, you're straight out of luck in getting any of the measly 2 gallons of milk they produce daily. It does contain insulin though, so I guess if you're a diabetic stranded in the desert with your ride and only a few candy bars, you may still have a shot to live. Horses, or as I call them, boring zebras, have become more niche in the dairy market since ancient humans began to squeeze out their juice. Horse milk is most commonly drunk in a small amount of European countries and parts of Asia. Not really a delicacy, but more of a local dish scattered throughout a few regions. Though rich in protein and vitamin C, horse milk is notorious among those who produce it as being hard to attain, as the memories of a horse are pretty short compared to the long hanging fingers of a cow's udder. Those lucky enough to cop a feel are usually rewarded for their efforts though, since a nursing mare yields up to 6 gallons per day, which is near equal to the average dairy cow. Horse cheese does exist, but it's harder to make. While horses and them ain't directly related, they are better camels. Knowing this, camels evolved to say, well, fuck you, y'all can't make cheese unless you use my stomach rennet, dickhead. Yeah, but horse cheese can only be made with camel rennet. Being harder to use for nutritional purposes, why not turn to beauty instead? Yep, mare milk makeup can be bought to don for any upcoming birthday parties, weddings, and/or funerals, only at the expense of knowing that you're wearing a baby horse's food on your face. Reindeer, or caribou, are genetic cousins to cows and sheep, so what you might see as a Christmas prank gone wrong could be a strategic business decision. Reindeer milk is one of, if not the richest milk produced by a land mammal, with 10% of it being pure protein and 22% butterfat content. For comparison, this butterfat percentage is 6 times more than the average bovine. High in calories, this super milk sounds too good to be true, right? Alas, caribou can only produce about 1.5 cups of milk per day. Adding insult to injury, the milk contains large amounts of dry, solid matter, meaning that it's more suitable for cheese making than drinking, unless you prefer chugging down what feels like a bottle of thicket poured into milk. While one of the furthest mammals genetically from cows, these porkers somehow evolved to produce milk near identical in composition to cows. On account of this, there ain't really a lot of interesting stuff to talk about other than the pitfalls. The only animal on this list who regularly gives birth to more than one offspring, sows have 18 spaced out mammary glands across its belly instead of an udder near the groin. With so many grabbing points, it'd be easy to get milk out of them, huh? Well, since the teats are so short, even more so than a mare's, it makes milking by hand a nightmare. If you're really desperate for some bacon juice, there are some weirdo farmers out there that use human breast milk pumps to get the hog swill.
Goat man, I'm dancing on your bridge. It's my bridge now.
Okay, you guys, I gotta be honest with you. I've kind of been lying to y'all. Well, not lying, but not giving the whole picture. You see, up until about the 1900s, most cheeses weren't made out of cow milk. Before dairying became a heavily industrialized process, when farmers had to raise their own animals without machine help, goats were smaller and easier to feed while still yielding the most amount of milk in proportion to their body size. Same goes for sheep, except they often had lower output. Since lactation only occurs when nursing young, the ability for the horny caprinae to mate all year round gives a larger window for product to be collected. Sheep, again, come up shorter than their skinny friends since they can only mate during fall and winter seasons. Nutritionally, the cereal sauce that sheep make is heavier than goats, with twice the fat and protein content, ideal for cheesing. To counter this, the pointy boys, well, gals, produce milk that doesn't separate the cream from the milk, meaning that its natural homogenization makes it richer and thicker. It may be nutritionally better, yet with all the cons against the woolly rascals, they've fallen to the wayside in favor for cabra leche. All in all, goat milk sounds pretty good, right? I mean, it was the preferred milk for cheese making up until the 1900s. So, why did I keep the truth from you? Why is the goat's dominance of ancient cheese making being kept secret from us all? Well, it's all because of the... As the dairy industry continued to grow and industrialize in America, things seemed to be doing great. The roaring 20s had finally come to be. Movies were filming, radios were broadcasting, flappers were... flapping. The dairy industry was also innovating too, shifting their focus away from smaller goats to produce cheese milk to using good old cold cow piss to make the stuff. It was a bit more expensive to feed house cows, but the amount of dairy farms were able to sell made up for the expenses. Things were looking good as the cow seized the throne as the king, or rather, queen, from the goat. But if you're even somewhat familiar with American history, you can guess what happened next. The Great Depression hit. Farmers couldn't afford to keep as many animals, so many severely downsized their farms, sometimes to a single cow or two. A lot of these farm fronts had to begin focusing on producing milk, cheese, and butter for their own families. Those who were making enough product to sell couldn't find many buyers because of the Depression. Around 1933, FDR started trying to regrow the economy with New Deal programs, including the Commodity Credit Corporation. The CCC was created to stabilize and support farming markets, and obviously the farming market that needed the most help was the dairy industry. America and the dairy market eventually got out of the slump caused by the Depression, but in the late 1940s, dairy sales began to fall again. To back up the cheesers this time, the CCC was given the ability to purchase dairy items directly from the producers using tax dollars. Apparently nobody told the CCC that they could stop buying shit after the market stabilized, because by 1981 they had spent $4 billion on behalf of the US government on dairy products, which was turned into cheese and butter. Now owning over 500 million pounds of butter and cheese, the government was running out of warehouses to store all this queso, and had to resort to tossing the remainder in some caves in Missouri. Unable to sell all this cheese back to US citizens, President Reagan created the Temporary Emergency Food Assistance Program to unload all the wanted feta onto low-income households who needed food. Often moldy and solid as a rock, government cheese continued to be distributed to citizens until the late 90s. Though out of the cheese distribution game, the US had invested so much into the now thriving dairy industry to the point where they needed to continue to shill the cheddar to potential buyers. The marketing group Dairy Management Incorporated was formed by a dairy advocacy group overseen by the USDA, with the main goal of shoving cheese in as much food as possible. It's pretty likely you know some of the shill items too. In 2009, DMI and Domino's Pizza partnered to incorporate quote-unquote cheese demand enhancements into their pizzas, increasing the amount of cheese on their pizza by 40%. 2013, Taco Bell joined in on the government's sellout game, increasing their total dairy sales by 4% with the Cantina Double Steak Quesadilla. I can't believe my favorite fast food place turned me into a government stooge. Those sons of bitches played me like a god fiddle. What were we talking about again? Oh, yeah. We've gone on about the different animals, the history, the government, but still don't have a definitive answer to the question. Well, as anticlimactic as it is, cows are just better suited for the job. Among the first domesticated animals, cows just got the upper hand by being favored early on. It's really as simple as that. Dairy items from the uddered ungulates make up 97% of America's total dairy consumption and don't show any signs of being slowed down even by alternatives anytime soon. Even then, America's the third largest consumer of the cattle crop worldwide, only drinking about 5.5 billion gallons in 2021 as opposed to the EU's 6.3 billion or India's whopping 22 billion gallons. The other subjects we discuss do have some significance towards the reign of the cow. But even events like government meddling that have been happening for over half a century don't stack up when compared to the thousands of years of evolution and breeding that cows have gone through at the hands of humans. Camels, reindeer, sheep, all the critters we discussed hold their place in the dairy hierarchy, each providing their own unique version of milk with different benefits and drawbacks. However, as much as these animals may be loved in different parts of the world, and as more and more people start moving towards more environmentally friendly or healthy alternatives, for a majority of countries, the cow remains the dairy queen.